Hello everybody. We're here to talk about holographic sights, namely being the only two companies who make any, Vortex with their new UH-1, commonly referred to as the Huey, and mounted on my Ruger AR-556 here I got my EOTech, and guest case being the AA based 5.52 version. While it's not a head-to-head one, since they only make these in the CR123 versions. This personally is my favorite, and I'll get into the fact that this does not offer similar options to EOTech's. But overall, from a basic standpoint, let's go over some information about these things. So, what is a holographic sight as opposed to, say, a generic red dot sight? Now right here I got a Holosun 510 mounted on my KSG. Now it's generally put in the same vein as holographic sights because it's got the red dot with a ring around it, same way as most of these EOTechs do. However, it is not quite the same. It's what's known as a reflex sight, being a LED reflected by a mirror or reflective coating on a piece of glass in the front of the unit. Whereas a true holographic sight, such as this EOTech here, is a laser diode that is put through a filter and reflected on mirrors, which eventually projects an image into your eye. Sounds fancy, but ultimately it just means it's a more power intensive but more effective red dot. Now, it's not quite the same because since it's just a reflection on this one, that it's much more clear than the projection on this, which is a bit grainy. It's grainy on both, although there is a difference as they're not exactly the same in size or style. Additionally, as you may have noticed, this one uses the extended battery banks. They do make ones that use the same battery, but I prefer these because I have way too many AA batteries and not enough 123s. So, overall, let's take a look at how they look under the camera. I was going to use my KSG's Holosun, but this is probably going to be a better choice so I don't have to mess up my zero. It's the same thing pretty much. I use a little LED in the back. It's not turned on right now, and then I use the reflector in the front to actually reflect the image. But yeah, it's a little smaller, and I don't have to take it off and mess up my zero to show it to the camera when we turn them on. If you look at the reflective side, let me zoom in and focus on the background. You can see it's just a real little reflection of the background of the unit. This one's particularly not great because you can see the entire unit in the reflection. But that's what a $30 red dot's going to do. Other ones are going to look better, but I don't have any that are going to work well with trying to look down at camera. Now, this compares to an EOTech. You can see it's a little grainy here, but it's still a very solid looking piece. And the way it moves is a bit different. It seems to just stay still, and I've heard it referred to as a reticle floating in space as opposed to just a reflection that is curved effectively to hold parallax. But yeah, as you can see, it's a pretty decent looking piece. And then if we pull out the Vortex right here, you'll see it doesn't look half terrible, albeit it's a bit rougher than the EOTech, and it's definitely showing a lot more of the internals than EOTech. Although the overall shape is actually a bit nicer looking. It's a bit unique. So this might look a little goofy, but I put the Vortex on my cannon just so that I could have it on AR upper without violating the National Firearms Act. So if you can see it here, it's a fair bit bigger than EOTech's. While this one compares to a smaller one, it's still getting pretty close in size to those AA ones with the extended bottom side. This one here also happens to be, while the main EOTech is a co-witness, absolute co-witness, this one's actually more of a third co-witness. So I've actually been made aware that it's actually an absolute co-witness on the Vortex site. I just was measuring it based upon my 22, which actually has a bit lower profile sights than an AR sight. So it does co-witness perfectly with standard height AR sights. And it's also a fair bit heavier than my EOTech, even though it doesn't use as big of a battery. I'm not entirely sure why it's heavier. It might even be tougher, that might be why. The glass isn't quite as strong, or not as strong as clear. And ultimately, when you take a look at all of the things, the worst part is the fact that the price, which is currently, it's got an MSRP of like $900, but I've never seen it anything other than $599. And that compares to EOTech's, that one over there, so's on Amazon for like $555. If you get rid of the night vision, which is not an option on the Vortex to get rid of, you get rid of the night vision on those, it's like $300. That's a lot less for a fairly decent holographic sight. Now, it's not that this is without merit. It's still a solid holographic sight, and if you're using it properly, how rough it looks won't really matter as long as you can still see what's on the other side. It's still going to be more durable than a reflex sight. And when it comes to US manufactured sights, it's a lot better than some other options out there. Now, it's kind of unfair to compare it to EOTech's, because EOTech's been doing this for years. They've had the contract with the military, and now the patent's expired. The Vortex is trying their hand, and they're learning as they go. I mean, like, it was a little bit before my time, but many of you may remember that EOTech did have their own growing pains as a manufacturer. So hopefully Vortex can get a Gen 3 or Gen 4 and finally get it to beating EOTech, or at least keeping up. But as it is here, it's still a step or two behind EOTech in forms of performance, both in cost and physical performance. It does look very cool though, I'll give it that. It has a very sci-fi look, whereas the EOTechs are more of a sense of aggressively modern. Going back to the EOTech now, I just want to mention how EOTechs have a lot of options. While Vortex, you get what you get. It's the standard $599 one, comes with night vision, uses the 123 battery, and has a quick detach mount. The EOTechs have a lot of different versions. They also don't just make holographic sights, but that's what we're here for today. So this one here is the AA night vision enabled, but no quick detach mount, because the quick detach mount puts the controls on the side, which I didn't particularly care for the look of. That's just a personal preference and is probably not the most tactical decision, especially since I had pretty much any choice in the matter for which one I could have gotten. But you can get this one with the 123 batteries like that one uses if you have a bunch of those, or I think it does provide more battery life, albeit it's going to ultimately cost you more per battery. And then with or without night vision is an option for most of the models. I believe the ones that they are specific, that Vortex is specifically trying to compete with that one, don't have a non-night vision option and are always quick detach, but you don't have to get those. And what is it? It's like the XPS3, I believe they call it. You're perfectly fine getting one of these. It's fine to get a AA battery one as long as it's made after, I think it's 2016 or 2017 they changed them. As long as it has this current logo pattern, it doesn't have any of the issues that they had back in the day when they're trying to make these. And it comes out as the good option. But yeah, aside from that, I don't really have anything else to talk about. Ultimately, your choices on what optics you run are your own. If you want to run the Vortex because it looks cool, or you have those Vortex magnifiers which cost like half of what an EOTech magnifier costs, that is one decent thing that you can go with, because the Vortex magnifiers are in fact like half the price of an EOTech one, at least where I've seen them. So whatever you want to run, or if you don't want to run one at all, you want to get a Hollow Sun. You're shilling out for the Chinese, but there's not really anything wrong with that as long as you're making a good purchase. But yeah, hopefully I've at least helped you learn something. And that's all I have to talk about today. I'll see you guys shortly when we go out to shoot this thing, when it warms up a little. And I hope you all have a good day now.